The air in the galactic high chamber was thin and carried the sharp scent of ozone. It was a vast circular room. The ceiling soared high above, showing a false view of swirling nebulas and distant stars. The walls gleamed with a silver metal only found on the old core worlds. In this room, the fate of species was decided. Today, they decided about humanity. Admiral Vex of the Galactic Coalition stood at the central podium. His reptilian scales, the color of polished oil, reflected the chamber lights. He was tall and rigid, a warrior born from a culture that valued power and clear rules of engagement. His yellow eyes swept over the gathered delegates, a collection of beings from 100 different stars. "The evidence is clear and undeniable," Vex said, his voice a dry hiss amplified by the room. With a tap of his clawed finger, a huge hologram burst to life above him. It showed a chaotic scene from the recent war on the frontier world of Kessel 7. Human soldiers, clad in simple armored suits, moved through jagged ruins. They did not fight in neat lines. They used the broken ground for cover. They threw grenades not at formations, but at the structural weaknesses of the Coalition's walker machines. The images showed a human, her face smeared with dirt, using a powered blade to disable a drone at close range. "Observe," Vex sneered. "No formation. No honor duel challenge. They hide, they ambush, they use the terrain like animals. Their tactics are not those of a civilized warrior race. They are the actions of beasts, driven by base instinct to survive at any cost." Another hologram replaced the first. It showed medical data highlighting human adrenaline levels, pain tolerance, and the ability to fight on with injuries that would incapacitate most species. Their biology is equally primitive. They rely on chemical surges, on brute physical endurance. They feel no shame in retreating only to attack again from the shadows. This is not warfare. This is predation. A soft murmur moved through the delegates. The insectoid Creval clicked their mandibles in agreement. The willowy Selenians looked away, their large eyes filled with delicate disapproval. To them, humanity's ways seemed messy, frightening, and without the clean order of energy cannons and fleet bombardments. In a quiet observation booth to the side of the main floor, 2 humans watched. Jinsu sat perfectly still. He was a man in his late 50s, his black hair streaked with silver. His face was calm, a placid lake showing no ripple of the anger some in the chamber might have expected. He wore the simple gray uniform of a human diplomat, his only decoration a small, worn pin on his collar showing a single, twisted olive branch. Beside him, Mira watched the proceedings with sharp, analytical eyes. She was younger, her dark hair tied back neatly. Her fingers flew over a datapad, recording not just Vex's words, but the reactions of every major delegate. She was a mapmaker of moods and tensions. "He is framing the entire narrative around savagery," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible. "He reduces every tactical adaptation to an animal reflex." Jinsu gave a slow, almost invisible nod. "He sees the claw, but not the mind that guides it," he replied, his voice a low rumble. On the podium, Admiral Vex reached his conclusion. He spread his arms, encompassing the damning holograms. "The Galactic Coalition cannot integrate a species that brings this feral chaos into our orderly peace. Their so-called heroism is merely a lack of control. They are a danger, a regressive one. For the safety of all, their military must be disbanded, and their worlds placed under Coalition stewardship until they learn proper conduct." The murmur grew louder. Some delegates stood, calling out questions. Chancellor Leora, the presiding judge, raised a slender, feathered hand for silence. Her avian face was unreadable, but her large, dark eyes were fixed on Jinsu's booth. She was known for her fairness, and for seeking understanding over quick judgment. "The tribunal acknowledges the Coalition's presentation," Leora said, her voice like wind chimes. "We will now hear from the human representative." All eyes turned to the observation booth. Jinsu stood up. He straightened his simple jacket and walked, without hurry, to the small speaker's platform assigned to him. He did not have the central podium. It was a subtle reminder of his place here, a defendant, not an equal. He stood before the galaxy. He looked at Admiral Vex, who stared back with cold, superior confidence. Jinsu took a slow breath. The chamber waited for the outburst, for the passionate, beast-like defense. Instead, Jinsu's calm voice filled the quiet room. Admiral Vex has shown you what humanity can do when it is cornered, he began. When our homes are threatened, when our children are in danger, he has shown you the tooth and the nail. He paused, letting his words hang. But he has made a critical error in his assessment. A flicker of irritation crossed Vex's scaled face. Error? The visuals are plain. Jinsu ignored the outburst, speaking directly to Chancellor Leora and the Assembly. He judges our nature by the fury of our protectors. He mistakes the shield for the heart of the one who holds it. He thinks our greatest strength is the violence we can unleash. Jinsu's gaze finally returned to Admiral Vex, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something deep and unyielding in his eyes. It was not anger. It was something heavier. It looked like pity. He leaned back slightly toward Mira, who was watching him intently. In a voice so low it was meant only for her, a whisper that the sensitive audio pickups barely caught, he murmured the words that would change everything. He mocks our soldiers. Jinsu breathed, almost to himself. But he hasn't met our real beasts yet. Myra's eyes widened just a fraction. She gave a single, sharp nod. She understood. The true defense was not going to be about the war at all. It was about to become a story. The silence in the chamber felt heavy after Jinsu's whisper. Only a few of the delegates with the sharpest hearing seemed to catch it. They leaned in, confused. Admiral Vex had not heard the words, but he saw the humans' quiet confidence. It irritated him. He expected rage or pleading. Not this calm. Chancellor Leora tilted her head. Her feathers rustled softly. The floor is yours, Representative Jinsu. You may present your defense. Jinsu gave a small bow of respect to her. He turned to face the assembly, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked less like a warrior and more like a teacher about to begin a difficult lesson. Admiral Vex calls us beasts. Jinsu started, his voice clear and steady. He says we fight with the instincts of animals. On the surface, in the heat of battle, perhaps this seems true. We are adaptable. We will use any tool, any terrain, any moment to protect our people. But this is not a lack of control. He paused, looking at the holograms of the battlefield, which still hung frozen in the air. This is a different kind of control. It is the control of a people who have known extinction's shadow. We do not fight for glory or for territory. We fight for survival. And we stop fighting the moment survival is assured. A snort came from Admiral Vex. Pretty words. Yet your soldiers caused maximum carnage. They did not face our forces in open space. They lured them into asteroid fields. They boarded ships with crude explosives. Where is the honor in that? Where is the honor? Jinsu asked softly. In bombarding a civilian colony from orbit because a military outpost is nearby. Our crude methods were to limit your collateral damage. We targeted your machines, not your escape pods. We mined asteroids to cripple your warships, not to destroy the hospital frigates you often placed behind them. The hologram shifted. Now it showed logs from the Battle of Kessel 7. Jinsu pointed. Here, your logs show a dropship, damaged and losing power, falling toward our lines. Standard human anti-air batteries had a lock. They did not fire. Our soldiers on the ground saw it was crashing, not attacking. They secured the area and took your surviving crew as prisoners. They gave them medical aid. The Admiral's evidence conveniently ends before this part. Admiral Vex shifted on his feet. A minor footnote. It does not change the overall pattern of feral behavior. It changes everything, Jinsu replied. A beast, driven by instinct, would have destroyed the helpless target. A human soldier, disciplined and with a purpose, made a choice. He chose restraint. He chose the harder path. That is not the action of a mindless animal. It is the action of a thinking, moral being. The delegates were listening more closely now. The story was shifting. Chancellor Leora's expression was one of deep interest. "You speak of morality in a war zone," Vex scoffed. "It is a luxury. True strength lies in overwhelming power. Your soldiers are strong for humans, I grant you. But against our technology, they are children. Your greatest champion is a primitive compared to my lowest soldier." Jinsu did not argue. Instead, he nodded. "You are correct, Admiral. In a contest of pure, unleashed destruction, you would win. Our warships are slower. Our guns are weaker. If we were the monsters you believe us to be, we would have developed planet killers. We would have built weapons of total annihilation. We have not. Do you know why?" The question hung in the air. Vex said nothing. "Because we are afraid of them," Jinsu said simply. "We are terrified of what we become when we unleash such things. We have done it before to ourselves on our own world. We carry that scar in our history and in our souls. So we hold back. We build shields before we build bigger spears. We send soldiers who can make a choice, not machines that only follow an order to destroy." He stepped closer to the edge of his platform, his eyes moving from delegate to delegate. "The Admiral sees a beast when he looks at our warrior, but he does not ask what that warrior is fighting for. He fights for the farmer who wants to tend his land, for the scientist who wants to study the stars, for the old man who remembers a war long past and wishes only for peace. The warrior is the wall. He is not the heart of our people." Admiral Vex was growing frustrated. This was not going as planned. The human was not defending the violence. He was explaining it away with philosophy. "More poetry," Vex snapped. "The galaxy deals in reality. The reality is your people's brutal efficiency. It is unsettling. It is unnatural." Jinsu finally showed a flicker of something harder. "What is natural, Admiral? Is it natural for a being to look at a wounded enemy and offer help? Is it natural to spare a life when taking it is easier? You call our fight unnatural. But you have never seen what we consider our true nature. You have only seen the teeth of the guard dog. You have never met the kindness of the hand that feeds it." He turned back to Chancellor Leora. "I request permission to present evidence. Not more battle logs, but a story. A single, true story from our past. It is the key to understanding what the Admiral calls our feral heart." Leora leaned forward. "A story? This is a tribunal of law, Representative. The law is built on understanding," Jinsu said. "To judge us, you must understand us. This story is the root of the discipline you saw on Kessel 7. It is the reason our soldier lowered his gun." Admiral Vex threw his hands up. "Absurd. We are not here for children's tales." But Chancellor Leora was curious. The human's calm logic was a stark contrast to the Admiral's bluster. She saw a truth being approached not with data, but with meaning. She nodded. "Permission granted. But be brief, Representative Jinsu. The tribunal will hear this story." Jinsu bowed again. He looked at Mira in the booth. She was ready, her hand over the data controls. A new file, old and from a primitive digital format, was loaded. Its title appeared in simple text against the starry void of the hologram. "Incident Report. Soa Village, Winter 1951. The delegates read the strange numbers. They did not know what they meant. But for Jinsu, it was the opening of a door to the past. The Real defense was about to begin. A ripple of confusion went through the galactic chamber. The harsh, clear images of battle were gone. In their place, the hologram showed shaky, grainy pictures in faded color. It showed a landscape of bare, snow-covered hills and simple, damaged houses with roofs of thatch. The sky was a dull white. It was a scene of quiet, frozen hardship. "What is this primitive display?" Admiral Vex demanded, his hiss full of contempt. "This is not relevant. This is pre-Starflight. This is mud and wood." Chancellor Leora raised a calming hand, but her large, dark eyes were fixed on the images. "You requested to show this, Representative Jinsu. Explain its relevance." Jinsu nodded. He looked at the old pictures, and his calm face softened with something like sorrow. "This is Earth," he said. Korea, the middle of the 20th century. A time of a terrible war on our home planet. Long before we had fusion engines or energy shields, we fought with chemical explosives and projectile weapons. It was a brutal, close, and personal conflict. He pointed to the hills. This was a place called Sowa Village. It was winter. The cold was so deep it could kill a man in hours. Two armies were moving through these hills. One from the north, one from the south, supported by a coalition of other nations. The people caught in the middle were farmers, like the man you see there. The hologram zoomed in shakily on a figure. It was a young man, perhaps in his late 20s. He wore ragged, padded clothes. His face was thin, his eyes dark and tired. He was carrying a bundle of sticks on his back. His name, written in Old English script, appeared beneath him. Daehyun. This is Daehyun, Jinsu said. By this winter, the war had taken his brothers. It had burned his family's farm. His parents were dead. He had nothing left but the ruins of his village and a daily fight against starvation and cold. To him, every soldier in every uniform was a source of terror and loss. The scene changed. It was a reconstruction based on old military and medical records. It showed a different young man, with fair skin and different clothing, stumbling through a pine forest. He was clutching his side. His name appeared, Corporal James Miller. This is James Miller, an American soldier. His unit was attacked and scattered. He was shot. He was lost. For 2 days he wandered, bleeding and freezing, trying to find his lines. He had no food. He was disoriented. He was going to die. Jinsu's voice was low and steady, painting the picture for the silent, watching aliens. On the 3rd day, Miller stumbled out of the trees and collapsed near a ruined stone wall. He was out in the open, helpless. And that is where Daehyun found him. The hologram showed the moment. Daehyun, gathering frozen roots from beneath the snow, looked up and saw the foreign soldier. The fear on Daehyun's face was instant and powerful. He froze. Miller, barely conscious, saw him too. He fumbled for his rifle, but he was too weak. 2 men, Jinsu said, from worlds that could not have been more different. One had lost everything to soldiers wearing uniforms like Miller's. The other was taught that every local might be an enemy in disguise. The instinct for both of them should have been clear. Fight or flee. Admiral Vex watched, his arms crossed. A simple battlefield encounter. The strong survive. This proves nothing. Watch, Jinsu said softly. In the hologram, Daehyun did not run. He did not attack. He stood, staring at the dying man for a long, long minute. His own breath came in ragged white puffs in the cold air. Then, slowly, he lowered his bundle of sticks. He walked forward, his hands open and empty. Miller tried to raise his gun again. Daehyun stopped. He pointed to Miller's wound, then to himself. He made a motion of carrying. He shook his head, saying no to the weapon. They shared no language, Jinsu explained. Only the common language of desperation. Daehyun moved closer. He carefully, slowly, took the rifle from Miller's weak grip. He set it against the stone wall. Then, with a grunt of effort, he pulled the larger soldier up and over his shoulders. He began to walk, staggering under the weight, back toward the shell of his burned-out home. He took him to the only shelter he had left, Jinsu continued. The hologram showed the inside of a damaged house, half open to the wind. Daehyun laid Miller down on a mat. He rebuilt a small fire from his gathered sticks. He melted snow for water. He used strips of his own spare clothing to bind the soldier's wound. For 5 days, the hologram showed the quiet, desperate routine. Daehyun would leave to scavenge what little food he could find. Frozen berries, a handful of hidden rice, sometimes a small fish from a hole in the ice. He would return and share it equally. He would tend the fire. He would rebandage the wound. They did not speak. They simply existed, 2 survivors in a sea of cold and war. The delegates watched, utterly absorbed. This was not the grand, violent drama of space battles. This was small, quiet, and profoundly strange to them. To risk yourself for an enemy made no tactical sense. It violated every rule of self-preservation. Why? The question came not from Vex, but from Chancellor Leora. She was leaning forward, her feathers perfectly still. He had every reason to hate. He had every reason to take the weapon and the supplies for himself, or to simply walk away. Why did he do this? Jinsu looked at the image of the young Daehyun, feeding a spoonful of thin broth to the wounded soldier. That, Jinsu said, his voice thick with emotion, is the question at the very center of the human soul. It is the question Admiral Vex has never thought to ask about us. He turned to face the Admiral directly. You look at our soldier and see only the potential for violence. You never ask what holds that violence back. Daehyun had the ultimate power. He had power over a helpless life. He could have taken revenge for all he had lost. He chose mercy instead. He chose to create life where there should have been death. That is the human beast. Not the one that fights, but the one that chooses. The hologram showed the inside of the ruined house. The fire was low. The cold crept in from every crack. Daehyun was checking the soldier's bandages. Miller was awake now, watching him with exhausted, confused eyes. He could not understand this man's actions. Jinsu let the silence stretch in the galactic chamber. The simple images held everyone's attention. They were so small, so personal, against the vast, sterile setting of the tribunal. On the sixth morning, Jinsu continued, his voice quiet in the huge room. Miller was strong enough to stand. Daehyun knew they could not stay. The war was moving closer. Patrols from both sides would come. He had to make a choice. In the hologram, Daehyun pointed east, then made walking motions with his fingers. He pointed to Miller, then to himself, and shook his head. He would not go with him. He then took Miller's empty rifle, opened the bolt to show it was unloaded, and handed it back. He kept the bullets, putting them in his own pocket, a gesture of both trust and caution. He would guide Miller back toward the American lines, Jinsu explained, but he himself would not cross over. He would return to his ruins. He was giving up his only source of help, his only companion, and sending him back to the very army that had caused his suffering. Admiral Vex shifted, uncomfortable. The logic was impossible to follow. A calculated risk, he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual force. Perhaps he hoped for a reward. Jinsu did not argue. He simply said, "Watch." The two men walked. It was a long, slow, painful journey through the silent, snow-covered hills. Daehyun led the way, choosing paths that avoided open ground. He stopped often, listening. He shared the last of the food. When Miller stumbled, Daehyun caught him. They did not speak. Finally, they reached a ridge. Below, in the distance, they could see the smoke of a military camp. They could see vehicles and tents with a familiar flag. Miller's people. Daehyun stopped. He pointed to the camp. He gave Miller a small nod. This was the end. Miller looked at him, his face a mix of gratitude and guilt. He fumbled in his pocket. He pulled out a small, crumpled photograph of a woman and a child. He offered it to Daehyun, a token, a piece of his own world. Daehyun looked at the photo. He did not take it. Instead, he reached into his own coat. He pulled out a single, dry persimmon, saved from the autumn harvest. He placed it in Miller's hand. Then he closed the soldier's fingers around it. A gift for the journey. Then, without another look, Daehyun turned and walked back the way they had come. He disappeared into the gray trees, alone again. The hologram froze on Miller's face, watching him go, the fruit in his hand. The galactic chamber was completely silent. The Selenian delegates had their hands over their hearts. The Kreval had stopped their clicking. The story was not about grand strategy or strength. It was about a single, quiet transaction of mercy. Jinsu spoke into the quiet. Corporal James Miller made it back to his camp. He told his story. It was recorded as a minor medical report. He survived the war. He lived a long life. He had grandchildren. He paused, and his gaze found Admiral Vex. Daehyun, We do not know exactly what happened to him next. The village was overrun in another battle a month later. He was likely displaced, a refugee. He lived with the consequences of his choice, which was likely more hardship. There was no reward. There was only the choice itself. He turned to the assembly. For centuries, this story was just one among thousands from a terrible time. It was not famous, but it was not forgotten. It was passed down, not as a story of a hero, but as a story of a question. The question Daehyun asked himself in the snow when he saw a wounded enemy. What am I? Jinsu's voice grew stronger. Admiral Vex believes our defining moment is when we pull the trigger. He is wrong. Our defining moment is in the second before. In that second, every soldier, every person hears two voices. One is the voice of fear, of anger, of survival at any cost. The other is the voice of Daehyun, the voice that says a life is a life. The voice that chooses the harder path because it is the only one that lets you remain human. He looked at the frozen image of the two men on the ridge. The soldier who spared your dropship crew on Kessel 7? He heard Daehyun's voice. The Admiral calls it a tactical error, a moment of weakness. We call it our greatest strength. It is the strength to control the beast within. Chancellor Leora finally spoke. Her chime-like voice hushed. And the man, Daehyun? What became of him in your history? A small, sad smile touched Jinsu's lips. He glanced at Mira. She tapped her datapad. The hologram changed again. The grainy winter images vanished. In their place was a new scene, full of color and life. It showed a sunny, green landscape, a small, neat farmhouse with a garden. A field of tall, golden grain swayed in a gentle breeze. An old man, his face a map of deep wrinkles, his hair white as snow, was on his knees in the dirt. He was carefully tending to a row of vibrant red peppers. He looked up and smiled at someone out of view, his eyes almost disappearing into the folds of his skin. He looked utterly at peace. Beneath the image, text appeared, Daehyun, age 94, agricultural colony, New Gyeongsang. He lived, Jinsu said, his voice full of quiet pride. After the war, after the displacement, he found his way. He never sought fame. He married. He had children. He farmed. He left a world of frozen hatred and chose to grow things instead. He is the reason we fight. He is the real beast the Admiral does not understand. Not a beast of claws and fury, but a beast of relentless, stubborn life. A beast that can walk through hell and still choose to plant a seed. Jinsu turned his back on the beautiful, peaceful scene and faced Admiral Vex once more. The contrast was shocking. On one side, the old farmer in the sun. On the other, the fierce Admiral in his sterile metal chamber. You are afraid of the wolf that snarls, Admiral? Jinsu said, his words clear and final. You should be in awe of the wolf that, despite every instinct, chooses not to bite. That wolf is far more dangerous, because you can never predict what it will do next. Except for one thing. It will always, always try to protect the man in the garden. For a long moment, no one in the galactic chamber made a sound. They all looked at the two images hanging side by side in the holographic field. On one side, the thin, tired face of young Daehyun in the winter ruins. On the other, the same man, old and smiling, his hands in the soil of a sunlit world. The contrast was a physical blow. It was a story told without a single energy blast or spaceship. Admiral Vex was the first to break the silence. He did not sound angry anymore. He sounded confused, as if his computer had given him an answer that made no sense. A touching tale, he said, his hiss softer. A single act of charity. But this is one man from a primitive era. It does not erase the documented, systematic aggression of your military forces now. One farmer does not define a species. Jinsu was ready for this. He had expected the Admiral to dismiss the story. You are right, Admiral. One act does not define us. But the memory of it does. The choice to remember it, to teach it, to hold it up, that defines us. He nodded to Mira. The hologram changed again. Now it showed a simple list, a timeline of Earth's history after that war. Key points were highlighted. After the war in Korea ended, Jin-Soo explained, the world moved on. But the story of the soldier and the farmer did not disappear. It was put into the archives. Decades later, when Earth faced a different crisis, a time of great political tension, the brink of a global war, a historian found Miller's medical report. He found Daehyun's refugee records. He pieced the story together. The timeline zoomed forward. It became required reading, not in military academies at first, in grade schools, in medical schools, in diplomacy training. It was not taught as a lesson in warfare. It was taught as a lesson in choice. The most important choice, to see an enemy as a person. Vex scoffed. Sentimental education. It did not stop your many later wars. No, it did not. Jin-Soo agreed calmly. We are not perfect. We fell and we fell hard many times. But each time we pulled ourselves back from the edge of total destruction. This story, and thousands like it, were part of the reason. They were the whisper in the dark saying, this is not who we are. We are also Daehyun. He stepped closer to the center of the chamber, addressing everyone. You see, Admiral Vex people build their warriors from the outside in. Better armor, bigger guns, stronger ships. We build ours from the inside out. The first and most important weapon we give a human soldier is not a rifle. It is a story. It is the story of a starving farmer who chose to share his last bite with an enemy. It is the story of a scared girl who hid a family from soldiers. It is the story of a pilot who disobeyed an order to fire on a civilian target. Jin-Soo's voice filled with a firm passion. That story is the cage for the beast inside. It is the restraint. Our soldiers are fierce because they have that restraint. They know exactly what they are fighting for. They are not fighting for conquest. They are fighting for the right of an old man to tend his peppers in peace. They are fighting so that the Daehyuns of the universe can exist without fear. He turned back to Vex. You mocked our primitive close-quarters combat. But that combat requires immense discipline. To look another being in the eye and pull a trigger is a terrible personal act. It leaves a scar on the soul. Our soldiers can do it when they must, because they know the value of what they protect is greater than the scar they will receive. They do not do it lightly. They do not do it for sport. That is why they seem so feral to you, because they fight with the weight of that choice on them. They fight to end the fight as quickly and precisely as possible, so they can go home and build gardens, not more graves. Chancellor Leora spoke. Her voice was thoughtful. You are saying your capacity for violence and your capacity for mercy are the same thing, born from the same place. Exactly, Jin-Soo said, bowing his head to her. They are two sides of the same coin, a coin called care. You cannot care so deeply for what you protect without being willing to become terrible to those who threaten it. And you cannot truly be terrible unless you also understand the profound cost, unless you also know how to be kind. The Admiral sees the terror and calls it mindless. But it is the opposite. It is fully mindful. It is a choice every single time. He pointed at the image of old Daehyun. That man is our blueprint. He had every reason to let the beast loose. He had suffered more at the hands of Miller's people than any of your ships suffered at Kessel 7. He chose the harder path. He tamed the beast. And in doing so, he became the most dangerous thing of all. A man who could not be made into a monster, no matter how hard the universe tried. Jin-Soo looked at the assembled delegates, his gaze steady. So judge us if you must. Disband our military if you believe you can. But know what you are truly trying to cage. You are not trying to cage a mindless, feral animal. You are trying to cage the disciplined will of a people who have looked into the abyss of their own nature and built a guardrail. You are trying to cage the ghost of a farmer who offered a persimmon. And I tell you now, that is a spirit that no fleet and no tribunal can ever contain. The silence that followed Jin-Soo's words was different. It was not the silence of boredom or waiting. It was the heavy, thoughtful quiet of an idea settling in. Across the vast chamber, delegates looked from the fierce Admiral Vex to the calm Jin-Soo, and then to the hologram of the old man in his garden. Admiral Vex stared at the image of Daehyun. His reptilian face, built for showing little emotion, seemed to struggle. The confusion was still there, but now it was mixed with a slow, dawning frustration. His entire argument was built on a foundation of human savagery. This human had taken that foundation and replaced it with a persimmon. It was infuriating. It was illogical. Stories, Vex finally said, the word a sharp hiss. You defend the actions of your military with a folk tale. You ask us to believe that your soldiers, in the heat of battle, think of farmers and fruit. He shook his head, scales glinting. It is a clever fiction, a distraction. The reality is the battlefield. The reality is the blood on the ground. Jinsu did not rise to the anger. He seemed almost patient. You are so close, Admiral. You see the blood on the ground, but you refuse to ask why it is there. The blood on Kessel 7 was spilled to prevent your fleet from glassing the Arcadia colony, where 500,000 farmers, engineers, and yes, storytellers were trying to live. We fought in the mud, so they would not have to die in their homes. He gestured to Mira. The hologram shifted once more. It no longer showed the past. It showed a live feed. The image was from a peaceful, green human colony world. It was a simple street in a small town. People were going about their day. An older woman was selling vegetables at a stall. Children were playing a game with a ball. A young couple walked together, laughing. This is New Gyeongsang right now, Jinsu said softly. The colony where Daehyun lived. He passed away 10 years ago, peacefully, in his sleep. But his family is there. His neighbors are there. The children of the children he taught to plant are there. He zoomed the image in on the vegetable stall. The older woman was handing a bundle of bright greens to a customer. She smiled. Her eyes were kind. She looked a little like Daehyun. That is Su-min, his granddaughter, Jinsu said. She runs the farm now. Every year, she saves the seeds from the sweetest persimmons and plants them again. He let that sink in. A direct line, from a choice in the snow to a fruit tree on an alien world. You speak of reality, Admiral, Jinsu continued, turning back to him. This is our reality. The soldier on Kessel 7 was not thinking of a philosophical story in the middle of a firefight. He was thinking of his cousin, who grows peaches on New Gyeongsang. He was thinking of his friend who wants to be a teacher. He was thinking of all the quiet, boring, beautiful lives that your photon torpedoes would erase in an instant. Daehyun's story is not a fiction we tell ourselves. It is the proof that those quiet lives are worth the fight. It is the proof that we can choose to be better. Jinsu took a deep breath, his final point ready. You fear the wrong thing. You fear our claws because they are visible. You should fear our roots. You can break a claw. It will grow back. But if you try to burn out our roots, the memory of why we choose to be merciful, the promise we made to people like Daehyun, you will find something grows back that you cannot understand. You will find a resilience that does not come from hate, but from love. And love, Admiral, is a much harder thing to kill. Admiral Vex was silent. He had no data to counter this. He had no fleet maneuver to deploy against the image of a woman selling vegetables. His entire worldview was based on measurable power. Shield strength, firepower, speed. Humanity was speaking in a currency he did not trade in. Chancellor Leora stood from her high seat. Her feathers were smooth, her posture serene. We have seen the evidence of action from Admiral Vex, she chimed. And we have seen the evidence of meaning from Representative Jinsu. The tribunal must now weigh not only what humanity does, but why they do it. She looked at Vex. Admiral, you have called them beasts, but a beast acts on instinct for itself. What we have seen today is a people who act, often at great personal cost, for an idea of community that stretches across time. They fight for their future, but they are guided by their past. This is not bestial. It is deeply cultural, and culture is protected under galactic law. Vex's head drooped slightly. It was a small gesture, but in his rigid form it spoke of defeat. He had lost, not on facts but on understanding. Jinsu did not smile in triumph. He simply bowed his head to the Chancellor. "We ask for no special treatment, only the chance to exist as we are, to protect our gardens, and to be left in peace to tend them." The live feed from New Gyeongsang still glowed in the center of the chamber. The simple, ordinary piece of it was more powerful than any weapons display. It was the answer to the Admiral's mockery. It was the real beast. Not a thing of rage, but a living, growing, enduring thing. A thing that chose every day to build instead of destroy. And in that choice it was unbreakable. The Galactic High Chamber did not erupt in cheers or arguments. The change was quieter than that. It was in the way the delegates sat. They were no longer leaning forward, tense for a fight. They were sitting back, thinking. The air seemed to lose its sharpness. Chancellor Leora looked from Admiral Vex to Jinsu. The Admiral stood at his podium, but he seemed smaller now. The story of the farmer had not broken him, but it had disarmed him. His accusations of mindless beasts echoed hollowly in a room that had just seen a century of human history connected by a single thread of choice. "This tribunal has heard two truths," Leora said, her voice clear and gentle. "One truth is of action. The other is of meaning. We cannot judge the first without understanding the second." She turned her large, dark eyes to Vex. "Admiral, your evidence shows a capable and determined military force. But it does not show an uncontrolled one. The human representative has provided a cultural context for their determination. Do you have any evidence that their actions on Kessel 7 were motivated by cruelty or a desire for conquest, rather than defense?" Admiral Vex was silent for a long moment. His internal computer, designed to analyze shield frequencies and engine signatures, had no data for this question. Finally, he spoke, his voice stripped of its earlier pride. "No," he admitted. "The tactical logs show precision. Their strikes were against military targets. They did not pursue fleeing ships. They did not attack the orbital hospital." He said the words as if they were a sour taste in his mouth. Leora nodded. "Then we are left with a difference of philosophy, not of law. The human method is different. It is personal. It is, to our eyes, perhaps more intense. But it is not, in this instance, unlawful." She looked out at the assembly. "The request to disband the human military and place their worlds under stewardship is denied. Humanity has the right to self-defense, as all sovereign species do." A soft murmur of agreement came from many delegates. Then Leora looked at Jinsu. "But humanity must also understand the fear they inspire. Your strength is not anonymous. It looks us in the eye. That is frightening. This tribunal strongly suggests that cultural exchanges begin immediately. Not just of your technology or your art, but of your stories, like the story of Daehyun, so that we may understand the roots of your restraint, and not just see the sharpness of your thorns." Jinsu bowed deeply. "We agree completely, Chancellor. We have always been ready to share our stories." "Thank you." The proceedings were over. The formal verdict would be recorded, but the real decision had already happened in the hearts and minds of everyone watching. The lights in the chamber brightened. Delegates began to rise, talking in low voices. Admiral Vex turned to leave his podium. As he did, he found Jinsu standing nearby, waiting to return to his booth. They stood facing each other for the first time without a crowd between them. The difference was stark. The tall, scaled warrior in his glittering uniform of rank, and the shorter, older human in his simple gray suit. Vex's yellow eyes studied Jinsu. He seemed to be searching for the beast he had mocked. He saw only a tired, resolute man. "Your farmer," Vex said, the word still unfamiliar on his tongue. He was one man, one moment. You build your entire identity on something so fragile. Jinsu offered a small, weary smile. "We build our identity on the choice to remember him. Every day we choose to remember kindness over hatred. That choice is not fragile, Admiral. It is the hardest work there is. It is a battle fought silently, inside millions of hearts, every single hour. The battle on Kessel 7 was just the loud, public echo of that much quieter, much more important war." He glanced over at Mira, who was packing her datapad. She gave him a small, proud nod. You wanted to meet our real beasts, Admiral, Jinsu said softly. Now you have. They are not in our soldiers. They are in our grandmothers, our teachers, our gardeners. They are the ones who tame the darkness inside us all. And they are why, no matter how hard you push us, we will always bend back toward the light. Vex had no reply. He gave a stiff, slow nod, not of agreement, but of acknowledgement. He had been heard, and he had, in turn, been forced to hear. He turned and walked away, his steps echoing on the polished floor. Jinsu walked back to Mira. Ready to go home? He asked. Yes, she said, smiling. I want to see a tree. A real one, not a hologram. Together, they walked out of the galactic high chamber. They did not walk as victors in a war, but as messengers who had delivered a difficult, necessary truth. Outside, the vastness of space waited, not as a battlefield, but as a garden, full of countless seeds yet to be planted. On New Gyeongsang, the sun was setting. Sumin finished her work at the vegetable stall. She walked back to the family farm, her boots dusty from the good earth. She paused by the oldest persimmon tree, the one her grandfather had planted with seeds from a world he never saw again. She touched its rough bark, a simple, daily ritual. Then she went inside to make dinner, living the quiet, powerful life that was humanity's true declaration to the stars. It was not a roar of defiance. It was the murmur of a growing thing, reaching always for the sun.